My grandfather's 15 meters estate went to whoever solved his puzzle first. My lawyer cousins hired investigators and code breakers. I remembered the chess games we played every Sunday. His favorite opening move spelled out the answer. I solved it in 20 minutes. They're still searching. My cousin Victoria's face when I walked out of Mr. Okonkwo's office will fuel me for the rest of my life. She was standing in the lobby with Marcus and Claire, surrounded by 3 men in expensive suits. They're hired experts, I assumed. They'd been there for hours apparently, laptops open, phones pressed to ears, legal pads covered in notes, and I just walked past them, manila envelope in hand, with a check for $15.2 million. Wait! Victoria grabbed my arm, her perfectly manicured nails dug into my hoodie sleeve. What are you doing here? We're still working on the puzzle. I solved it. That's impossible. We've had cryptographers and investigators working on this for, she checked her Cartier watch, 4 hours and 17 minutes. There's no way you figured it out before us. I pulled my arm free, held up the envelope. Khan, I said. It's a chess opening. Grandpa's favorite. He used it every Sunday for 15 years. The color drained from her face. How could you possibly? Because I was there, every Sunday, while you 3 were too busy building your careers to visit your own grandfather. Marcus stepped forward, 6'2", senior partner at his firm, the kind of man who intimidated people for a living. This is fraud. You must have had inside information. There's no way. The inside information was called showing up. I looked at all 3 of them. These cousins who'd spent every family gathering bragging about their salaries, their cases, their connections, who'd looked at me like I was a disappointment because I worked at a bookstore instead of a law firm, who'd treated Grandpa like an obligation to be scheduled around rather than a person to be loved. You could have solved this in 20 minutes, I said, if you'd ever bothered to play a single game of chess with him. I walked out into the afternoon sun. Behind me, I heard Victoria's voice crack. This isn't over. She was right about that. It was just beginning. My name is Maya Rodriguez, 26 years old, part-time employee at Lighthouse Books on 5th Street, full-time disappointment to my extended family. At least, that's what they thought. My grandfather, Eduardo Rodriguez, built his fortune from nothing. Immigrant from the Philippines. Arrived in California in 1962 with $40 in his pocket and a degree in engineering that American companies didn't recognize. Worked as a janitor for 3 years while he got recertified. Eventually started his own construction company. Built it into a $50 million empire before selling in 2008. He was the American dream personified, and his grandchildren, my cousins, had inherited his ambition, if not his humility. Victoria was the oldest, 34, corporate attorney at Morrison & Associates, $380,000 a year plus bonuses. She had a corner office, a Tesla, and a personality that could freeze water at 50 paces. Marcus was next, 32, senior partner at his own boutique litigation firm. He'd made the 40 under 40 list in the legal journal 3 years running. Never let anyone forget it. Claire was 30, tax attorney, quieter than the other 2, but just as ruthless. She'd found loopholes that saved her clients millions while regular people struggled to pay their bills. And then there was me, the youngest, the one who didn't go to law school, the one who got a degree in English literature and then, horror of horrors, actually used it to work with books instead of making money. My family gatherings were exercises in condescension. Still at the bookstore, Maya? That's nice. Have you thought about going back to school? It's not too late to do something with your life. Your grandfather must be so proud, said with a smile that meant the opposite. But here's what they didn't know. While they were climbing ladders and billing hours and accumulating the trappings of success, I was spending every Sunday afternoon at Grandpa's house, playing chess. It started when I was 11. My parents had just divorced. Ugly, bitter, the kind of split that turns children into weapons. I was shuttled between houses, caught in the crossfire, drowning in a war I didn't understand. Grandpa noticed. Come, he said one Sunday when the whole family was gathered for his birthday. Everyone else was in the living room, drinking wine, talking about themselves. I was in the corner, trying to be invisible. He led me to his study, closed the door, sat me down across from a chessboard I'd never noticed before. Do you know how to play? I shook my head. Then I'll teach you. That afternoon, while the adults networked and the cousins compared accomplishments, I learned the basics of chess from a man who'd been playing since before my parents were born. Come back next Sunday, he said when it was time to leave. We'll play again. I did, and the Sunday after that, and every Sunday for the next 15 years. Those afternoons were sacred. We didn't talk about my parents' divorce. We didn't talk about my grades or my potential or what I was going to do with my life. We just played chess and talked. Grandpa told me stories about the Philippines, about his childhood during the war, about coming to America with nothing and building everything, about the wife he'd lost to cancer in 1998, the love of his life, gone too soon. He told me about regret, about the things that matter and the things that don't, about how success isn't measured in dollars or titles, but in the moments you show up for the people who need you. Your cousins, he said once, moving his bishop across the board, they think I'm proud of their careers. And I am. But careers end, titles fade, money gets spent. He captured my night, smiled that quiet smile. What lasts is the time you give, the presence you offer. That's the only currency that matters. I didn't didn't fully understand it then, but I felt it. Every Sunday, sitting across from him, I felt it. Grandpa had a routine. Every game, he opened the same way. Pawn to c6, then pawn to d5, building a defensive structure that protected his king while controlling the center of the board. The Caro-Kann defense, he told me when I was 12, named after two players from the 1800s, Caro and Kann. They developed it together. Why do you always use it? Because defense begins with the first move. He moved his pieces with practiced ease. In chess, in business, in life, if you protect what matters first, you can survive anything. He never said the name during our games after that, never announced his opening, just made the moves, and I learned to recognize them. Pawn to c6, pawn to d5, the Caro-Kann, every Sunday. For 15 years, it became our language, a conversation without words. Grandpa died on a Thursday in October. I got the call at work. Heart attack. Quick, they said. He didn't suffer. I closed the bookstore early, drove to his house, sat in the study where we'd played 1,000 games and cried until I couldn't breathe. The funeral was Saturday, standing room only. Grandpa had touched hundreds of lives over his 91 years. Former employees, business partners, neighbors, friends, and family. Victoria flew in from a conference in New York. Marcus rescheduled 3 depositions. Claire took her first vacation day in 2 years. They stood in the front row, faces appropriately somber, accepting condolences like they were collecting business cards. He was such an inspiration. We'll miss him terribly. He built such an amazing legacy. I stood in the back, watched them perform, wondered when they'd last actually spoken to him. The last time Victoria visited was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. She stayed for 45 minutes and spent most of it on her phone. Marcus hadn't been to Grandpa's house since 2019. He always had conflicts, work dinners, client emergencies, important things. Claire called on birthdays. That was it. But they were family. They deserved to grieve, even if they hadn't earned it. The will reading was 2 weeks later. Mr. Emmanuel Okonkwo, Grandpa's attorney for 30 years, gathered us in his conference room on the 14th floor of a downtown high-rise. Wood paneling, leather chairs, the kind of space designed to make serious things feel appropriately serious. Victoria showed up first, power suit, heels, legal pad for taking notes. Marcus and Claire arrived together, equally dressed for battle. I walked in wearing jeans and my bookstore hoodie, the one with the coffee stain on the sleeve I could never quite get out. Victoria's eyebrow twitched, the only acknowledgement I got. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Okonkwo said. 72 years old, 38 years of practice, specializing in estate law. He'd known Grandpa longer than any of us had been alive. As you know, Eduardo's estate is substantial, approximately $15.2 million in liquid assets, plus properties, investments, and personal effects. Marcus leaned forward. I could see him calculating. "Before we proceed, I need to inform you of an unusual provision in your grandfather's will." Victoria frowned. "Unusual how?" Mr. Okonkwo opened a folder, pulled out 4 sealed envelopes. "Eduardo has stipulated that his entire estate will go to whichever grandchild solves his puzzle first." Silence. "I'm sorry," Claire said slowly. "A puzzle?" "Correct. Inside each of these envelopes is a riddle. The first grandchild to deliver the correct answer to my office inherits everything. No time limit, but the competition begins the moment you open your envelope." "What about the rest of us?" Marcus asked. "What do the losers get?" "Nothing. The winner takes all." More silence. Heavier this time. Victoria reached for an envelope. "This is highly irregular. Estate distributions should be—" "Your grandfather was very clear," Mr. Okonkwo interrupted. "He said, and I quote, 'My grandchildren have spent their lives competing. Let them compete one more time. But this time, the winner won't be the one with the most degrees or the biggest salary. It will be the one who actually knew me.'" That hit different. Victoria's jaw tightened. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Claire was already calculating angles. "Fine," Victoria said. "Let's do this." Mr. Okonkwo handed us each an envelope, our names printed on the front in Grandpa's handwriting. "Good luck," he said. "I'll be here when you have your answer." We opened the envelopes simultaneously. Inside, a single index card, the same message on each one, written in Grandpa's careful script. "I am 6 letters. I protected kings. I opened every game we played. I was never spoken, but always shown. What am I?" Marcus was on his phone before he finished reading. "I'm calling Davidson Investigations. They specialize in estate puzzles and code breaking. I know a cryptographer at my firm," Victoria said, already texting. "This is clearly some kind of cipher. The 6 letters is a key." Claire was typing on her laptop. "I'm running the phrasing through puzzle databases. Someone's probably solved something similar before. They were treating it like a case, a problem to be outsourced, a task for experts. They didn't even look at each other, just dove into their phones, their networks, their resources. All 3 of them glanced at me, waiting. "What's your approach?" Marcus asked. The condescension was barely hidden. "Going to Google it?" I folded the index card carefully, put it in my pocket. "I'm going to think about it." Victoria actually laughed. Short, sharp, dismissive. "Good luck with that. We'll have our answer by tonight." I stood up, nodded to Mr. Okonkwo, walked out of the conference room without another word. Behind me, I heard Claire say, "Should we be worried about her?" And Marcus, "About Maya? Please. She works at a bookstore." I drove home in silence. My apartment was small. Studio on the 3rd floor of an old building in a neighborhood the realtors called up and coming and everyone else called affordable. 1 room, 1 window, 1 hot hot plate I called a kitchen. I made tea, sat at my tiny kitchen table, pulled out the index card. I am 6 letters. I protected kings. I opened every game we played. I was never spoken but always shown. What am I? 6 letters. Protected kings. Opened every game we played. Never spoken but always shown. I closed my eyes, let my mind drift back to Grandpa's study, the leather chairs, the window that looked out over his garden, the chessboard between us. Defense begins with the first move. His voice in my memory, clear as Sunday afternoon. Every game, every single game for 15 years. The same opening. Pawn to c6, pawn to d5, protected kings. Yes, the Caro-Kann was a defensive opening designed to shield your king while maintaining flexibility. Opened every game we played. Literally. He never opened any other way. Never spoken but always shown. He'd told me the name once when I was 12. After that, he just demonstrated it. Move after move. Year after year. 6 letters. C-A-R-O-K-A-N-N. Wait, that was 8 letters. I frowned. Counted again. C-A-R-O-K-A-N-N. 8. But the riddle said 6. I thought harder. Grandpa was precise. Every word mattered. Then it hit me. The opening wasn't Caro-Kann. Not to him. It was the move. The first move. The one that started the defense. C6. No, that was only 2 characters. I grabbed a pen. Started writing. The defense. The name. What was the core? Karoka. No. Wait, maybe it was simpler than that. I was overthinking it. Grandpa hated overthinking. The best moves are the simplest ones, he always said. Don't complicate what doesn't need to be complicated. The answer wasn't cryptographic. It wasn't a code. It was just a name. Caro-Kann. 6 characters if you counted the hyphen. But that wasn't right either. I sat back, took a breath, let the puzzle breathe. Never spoken, but always shown. He never said the name during our games, just made the moves. The moves told the story. What if the answer wasn't the name of the opening? What if it was something else? I thought about everything Grandpa taught me. Every lesson, every aphorism. Defense begins with the first move. Protect what matters first. The Caro-Kann is patient. It doesn't attack. It waits. It builds. It endures. Endures. Wait. He used that word a lot. About the opening. About life. About love. Endure the hard times. Build your foundation. The attack will come, but if you've defended properly, you'll survive. Endure. 6 letters. No, that wasn't a chess opening. I was overcomplicating this. Going down rabbit holes. Doing exactly what my cousins were probably doing right now. Treating it like a puzzle to be decoded rather than a message from someone who loved me. I looked at the card again. I am 6 letters. I protected kings. I opened every game we played. I was never spoken, but always shown. The answer had to be something Grandpa and I shared. Something from our Sundays. Something personal. I opened every game we played. The opening, the defense, the move, Caro-Kann. No, defend, 6 letters. But that wasn't the name. I was going in circles. Then I remembered something. Grandpa didn't call it the Caro-Kann most of the time. He had his own name for it. A nickname he used when teaching me. This is my shield, he'd said when I was 11. Every king needs a shield. This opening is mine. Shield. 6 letters. But that wasn't right either. Too generic. Mr. Okonkwo would need something more specific. I stood up, paced my tiny apartment, looked at the chessboard on my bookshelf, the one Grandpa gave me when I turned 10. The pieces were still arranged in our last game, the one we'd played 3 weeks before he died. I couldn't bring myself to reset it. His queen was positioned aggressively. My king was trapped in the corner. He'd been about to checkmate me. He always won, except the times he let me win, which I could always tell. I stared at the board, and then I saw it. His opening position. The pawns at c6 and d5. The classic Caro-Kann structure. 6 letters. Caro-Kann. Wait, Caro-Kann. If you removed the hyphen, if you combined the names. Caro-Kann. 7 letters. No, but what if you didn't use both names? What if you just used one? Caro. 4 letters. Can. 4 letters. Neither worked. I sat back down, pulled out my phone, searched Caro-Kann defense 6 letters. Nothing helpful. Searched Caro-Kann variations. A Wikipedia article. Different lines, different names. And then I saw it. One of the main variations was called the classical variation. Clask. No. Another was called the advance variation. Advance. No. Then Karpov variation. Karpov. 6 letters. But that wasn't Grandpa's style. He didn't play the Karpov variation. He played the classical line. I kept reading, and then I found it. The defense itself. The core structure. The technical name for the pawn formation. Caro formation. Caro form. No. I was losing my mind. I set down the phone, picked up the index card. I was never spoken but always shown. He never spoke the name. But he always showed the move. The first move of the Caro-Kann defense is c6. Pawn to c6. c6. 2 characters. But what if Grandpa wrote it differently? In some notation systems, c6 is written as pc6, or just c6. But there was another way to write it. An older way. Descriptive notation. In descriptive notation, the move would be written as, I grabbed my phone again, searched Caro-Kann descriptive notation, PQB3. No, still not 6 letters. I was officially overthinking this. I took a breath, closed my eyes. What would Grandpa want? Not complexity, not codes, just me, remembering, understanding. I protected kings. The Caro-Kann protects the king. I opened every game we played. The Caro-Kann opened every game. I was never spoken but always shown. He showed me the Caro-Kann through moves, not words. I am 6 letters. Karokän. No, wait, I counted on my fingers. Carokn. 6 letters. Karokän. Not Karokän, with 8 letters. Karokän. Without the second A and without the hyphen. But that wasn't how you spelled it. Unless Grandpa was testing whether I'd been paying attention. Not to the name, not to the spelling, to him. When Grandpa wrote things down, he had a habit, a quirk. He compressed words, removed unnecessary letters. Why write more than you need, he'd say. The meaning is what matters. Karokän. His version, his shorthand, his way of writing it. I'd seen it in his notes, in the margins of his chess books, in the labels on his old game records. Karokän. 6 letters. That was the answer. I called Mr. Okonkwo's office. Rodriguez and Associates, how may I help you? This is Maya Rodriguez. I need to speak with Mr. Okonkwo. I have the answer to my grandfather's puzzle. Pause. Already? I'll transfer you. Click. Hold music. Then, Maya, this is Emmanuel. You have an answer? Karokän. It's Grandpa's shorthand for the Karokän defense. The chess opening he used every Sunday. Silence on the line. That's correct. How did you know? We played chess together for 15 years. It was his favorite opening. He taught me when I was 11. We must have played 1,000 games, and he always started the same way. More silence. When Mr. Okonkwo spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. Your grandfather told me when he drafted this provision that you would figure it out. He said you were the only one who would understand. I felt tears prick my eyes. He also left a separate letter for you, not part of the will, just for you. Can you come to my office tomorrow to sign the papers and collect it? Yes, of course. Maya, congratulations. Your grandfather was very proud of you. He told me that often. I hung up, sat in my tiny apartment, and cried. The confrontation with my cousins happened 2 days later. Word had gotten out that the puzzle was solved. Mr. Okonkwo's office had notified all parties as required. Victoria, Marcus, and Claire demanded a meeting. We gathered in Mr. Okonkwo's conference room. Same wood paneling, same leather chairs, very different energy. Victoria was furious. Her composure, usually unshakable, was cracking at the edges. This is ridiculous. She must have had inside information. There's no way a bookstore employee solved a puzzle that 3 attorneys and their experts couldn't figure out. The puzzle required knowledge of your grandfather, Mr. Okonkwo said calmly. Maya had that knowledge. You did not. That's discriminatory, Marcus jumped in. The puzzle was designed to favor her specifically. No, the puzzle was designed to favor whoever knew Eduardo best. That happens to be Maya. We're contesting this, Claire said, on grounds of undue influence. Clearly our grandfather wasn't in his right mind when— I'm going to stop you right there. Mr. Okonkwo's voice went cold, professional cold, the kind that reminded you he'd been practicing law since before any of us were born. Your grandfather was evaluated by 3 independent physicians before drafting this will. Dr. Patricia Mensah, geriatric specialist, 22 years of practice. Dr. James Oyalaran, neurologist, 18 years. Dr. Sarah Adeyemi, psychiatrist, 24 years. All 3 certified that Eduardo was of sound mind and fully competent. He pulled out a folder. I also have signed affidavits from his caretaker, his housekeeper, and his longtime friend Walter Chen, all attesting to his mental clarity in the months before his death. Any challenge to his competency will fail. Victoria's jaw tightened. Then we'll challenge the puzzle itself. It was arbitrary, unfair. The puzzle was a test of relationship, not intelligence. Your grandfather wanted his estate to go to the grandchild who actually knew him, the one who spent time with him, the one who listened to his stories and learned his passions and showed up when it wasn't convenient. Mr. Okonkwo looked at each of my cousins in turn. You 3 are successful attorneys. You have degrees from excellent schools and careers that would make anyone proud. But in 15 years, how many times did any of you play chess with your grandfather? Silence. How many times did you visit just to visit? Not for holidays, not for obligation, just because you wanted to see him? More silence. Maya came every Sunday, rain or shine, for 15 years. She knew Eduardo in a way none of you bothered to learn, and now she's inherited his estate. He closed the folder. You're welcome to contest, but I should warn you, Eduardo anticipated this. He left a video statement explaining his reasoning. If you force me to play it in court, it won't reflect well on any of you. Victoria stood up. Her face was red, with barely suppressed rage. This isn't over, Maya. I looked at her. This cousin who'd spent years looking down on me, who'd treated me like a disappointment, who'd never once asked about my life, my dreams, my relationship with the grandfather we shared. Yes, it is, I said quietly. You just don't know it yet. The video was Grandpa's final gift. Mr. Okonkwo played it for me privately after my cousins left. Grandpa sat in his study, the same study where we'd played 1,000 games, looking directly at the camera. Maya, if you're watching this, you solved my puzzle. I knew you would. His voice was thin but strong, the voice I'd grown up with. Your cousins will be angry. They'll say it's unfair, that I favored you, and maybe I did. But favor isn't given for no reason. It's earned. He smiled, that quiet, knowing smile. You came every Sunday, for 15 years, while everyone else was too busy, too important, too focused on their careers. You sat across from an old man and learned his stories. You let me teach you chess. You let me feel useful. His eyes glistened. Do you know why I always opened with the Karokän? Because it's a defense. It protects what matters before attacking what doesn't. That's how I built my business. That's how I live my life, and that's what I tried to teach you. He leaned forward. The money isn't the inheritance, Maya. The money is just money. The real inheritance is what I taught you. The patience, the presence, the understanding that showing up is more important than showing off. He sat back. Use the money wisely. Build something. Help people. And if your cousins ever want to know why they lost, tell them the truth. They could have had this too. All they had to do was show up. The video ended. I sat in that conference room for a long time, and for the second time in 2 days, I cried. The lawsuits came, as expected. Victoria filed first. Undue influence, lack of capacity, unfair advantage, every angle she could think of. Marcus followed with his own challenge. Claire joined as co-plaintiff. The legal battle lasted 8 months. In the end, they lost. Completely. Judge Amara Okafor, probate court, 27 years on the bench, ruled in my favor on every count. The decedent's wishes were clear, legal, and competent, she wrote in her decision. The plaintiff's argument essentially boils down to a complaint that their grandfather favored a grandchild who actually spent time with him. The court finds no legal basis for that complaint. People are allowed to reward love with love. The ruling made the news. Local paper first, then picked up nationally. Granddaughter wins $15 million after solving chess puzzle. Made for good headlines. My cousins' names were in all the articles. Their law firms' names. Their failed challenges. Victoria's partners were reportedly concerned about the optics. Marcus's boutique firm lost 2 major clients who didn't want to be associated with someone who sued their own family over a will. Claire requested a leave of absence that became permanent. They'd spent 18 months and over $400,000 in legal fees trying to take something that was never theirs. All they had to do was show up. It's been 2 years now. I don't work at the bookstore anymore. Instead, I own it. Bought it from the retiring owner with a small portion of my inheritance. I also funded a scholarship program in Grandpa's name, the Eduardo Rodriguez Foundation for first-generation college students. We've helped 47 kids so far. Next year, it'll be more. The rest of the money is invested, growing, waiting for the right opportunities to do more good. I still play chess every Sunday. Not at Grandpa's house. That was sold, as he'd requested, with proceeds going to charity. But I found a chess club downtown. Older players mostly. Retired businessmen, former professors, people who remember when games were played in person instead of on screens. We drink coffee, tell stories, move pieces around boards, and I always open the same way. Pawn to c6, pawn to d5, the Caro-Kann defense.